Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Conley, and I am serving as your worship associate this month. My pronouns are he and him. We gather today to celebrate the lifelong journey of learning. Learning is about far more than classrooms. It begins in childhood, but it continues throughout our lives. Through our relationships, our successes, our failures, our moments of joy and grief, and through the questions that invite us to grow. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we believe that faith is not about having the answers. It's about cultivating curiosity, seeking wisdom, and remaining open to new understandings. Today we honor the educators who help shape minds, nurture curiosity, and encourage the next generation to think critically, imagine boldly, and care deeply. We also recognize that each of us is both a teacher and a learner. Every conversation, every act of kindness, every challenge, and every new perspective has something to teach us. We believe that the richest learning happens when every person knows they belong. So whether you are young or old, whether you are living with a visible or invisible disability, whether you are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, questioning, straight, or still discovering who you are, whether you arrived here with faith, with doubt, hope, grief, certainty, or questions, know that you are welcome here. May this community, where curiosity is celebrated, where differing perspectives are met with respect, where every voice has value, and where we leave today just a little wiser, a little more compassionate, and a little more connected than when we arrived. May we open our hearts, quiet our minds, and begin our time of worship together. Our chalice lighting today is called the Banned Book Chalice Lighting by Julie Conradi. We light this chalice remembering the freedoms long established in our nation: freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom from the establishment of religion. We light this chalice honoring those who exemplify protecting those freedoms: librarians, booksellers, teachers, authors, journalists. We light this chalice so by its light we may read all the books, books with an archaic language, books with offensive material, books which affirm the diversity of the human race, books which normalize our varied sexualities, books which share a multidimensional perspective of history. May we bask in the glow of its light this morning as we illuminate, brighten, and radiate because of the books we have read and the books we have yet to read. Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life's abundance and service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus do we covenant together. Our reading this morning comes from Linda R. Welter. Today, children are born into a swirl of cultures, races, and religions. Whether we encourage or limit independence of thought, our children take for granted the bustling marketplace of ideas where so many religious orientations compete for legitimacy. I have come to realize just how many people are choosing to construct a sustaining philosophy of life from many different beliefs and values. For today, we're going to have a panel discussion about EDUUCATION, and I welcome to the stage Ian Gray, Camrose, and Emily Brock. Well, good morning. All three of you are in some capacity educators. I myself was actually an educator many years ago before the airline. I was a resource teacher at the elementary school in Reno. So we're all excited to have you. So the first question I have for you, for everyone, is how does your Unitarian Universalist faith shape the way you see your students and your role as an educator?
Okay, of course. I would say, quick intro. Hello, my name is Ian Gray. I have spent most of my career in and around education, working in informal education, museums, and working with the public. I have also worked in university settings with student support programs, and currently I work in managing a tutoring center. So working with students has been throughout my entire career, and I have a master's in education. How it informs my view of students, really the core of it is the inherent worth and dignity, and seeing, especially when students are struggling, whatever their background, whatever their issues that we're trying to work with them through, that inherent worth and dignity is ultimately the core element of we are all trying to learn and we're all trying to support them. And that really informs how I view my students and how I try to assist them, which is holistically and with compassion and accessibility in mind. And so I really want to be able to support and promote belonging for my students so that they have the environment where they are best able to learn.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cam Rose. I started out as an engineer, but I quickly decided that was not for me, and I moved into education, which is basically my part-time job, but my full-time experience. I've worked in higher education. I've worked as a student mentor for students. I've worked as a substitute teacher for a number of years, from kindergarten all the way up through high school. I currently am looking for work as a tutor. I work in math and science, and I also work as a referee. I do refereeing part-time, so I don't just work with students in the classroom. I work with them in their own fields of extracurriculars as well. I became a UU member not too long ago. I started exploring my UU faith in January of this year. So I haven't had the chance to really implement that part of my faith with my teaching, but my pedagogy, my teaching style is very student-based. It's student-centered. I want my students to ask questions, and I want them to use their critical thinking skills when I teach. I don't want to lecture only. Lecturing is how you quickly get people to tune out, and they don't really care anymore. And students are children, but children are also people. Children are just younger people. People still have their autonomy, as Ian has stated. They still have their thinking skills, and they still have their own independence. And it's important for me to allow that to flourish in the classroom setting. So as much as I enjoy exploring my ideas here and being able to talk with people of different cultures and backgrounds, I do the same with my students because I want them to be able to feel comfortable not just sharing things about themselves, but learning things about other people and accepting those parts of their friends and their peers and their teachers as well.
My name's Emily, and I think everybody's a teacher. We all teach by example. Sometimes you learn more from seeing one person do something than from a whole lecture. But I have to agree with what both of them had said. For me, I grew up Unitarian, so I guess it's hard for me to distinguish what is or isn't. I don't know. But trying to see everybody where they're at, accept their differences. And I really like the idea of encouraging critical thinking, to think for yourself. It's not just hand it out, but I want you to think about it. Really, to really learn something well, you have to find it yourself. You have to believe it. You have to experience it, you know. And it's kind of like something I heard recently, what's 1/2 plus 1/3? You have to understand how to do it. You know, I can tell you, but that's not going to do it. Anyways, that's all. Well, what do I do? So let's see. I teach math at Dallas College. I've taught there since my son was born over 24 years ago, but only part-time most of that time, but now I'm full-time. Before that, though, I have taught in the Peace Corps in Southern Africa, and I tutored a lot in between. I worked in some private schools, and yeah, is that good?
Sure. And Emily, conversely, how does being an educator shape your Unitarian Universalist faith?
That one is hard for me to say, because I grew up Unitarian. I don't know. I don't know how to distinguish it, I guess. I don't know.
As I said, I've kind of started exploring my faith kind of in between my teaching, but I do know that when I go back into the classroom, for me, it's going to be adding a bit more patience to things. I am unfortunately not as patient as I should be. I wish I was a little bit more patient. I'm working on it, and I think experiencing UU has allowed me to really become much better of a listener. I like hearing all of you speak on your stories, on your experiences, and I want to be able to pull that over into my teaching experience as well, because as we know, children can sometimes deviate on topics. They like to really move around in their mind when it comes to talking about one thing and then thinking about another thing. And previously, when I was teaching and tutoring, sometimes I would be like, okay, well, we need to focus on this. And I realize that it's kind of taking away from some of their confidence. And I really think that that confidence is needed when they need to learn new things, especially things that they might not be confident in as well. A subject that may be math or science or something like that, or even history.
Well, as many of you who have sat through a science lecture disguised as a sermon can attest, in education, as well as especially as I've done more in the pulpit over the last couple of years, really, it is challenging the idea of it's not that I can tell you something. It's that I want you to think about something. And you need to have the accurate information regarding that, but ultimately, I can't tell you what to believe. I can tell you what 2 + 2 is. That's not a belief, that's a fact. But what you do with those facts is where that conversation comes from. And that's where that dialogue and that wanting to inspire, that curiosity, that wanting to learn more has been central to both my career in education and also my own lifetime in UU.
With the recent politicization of education, especially here in Texas, with recent legislation like displaying the 10 Commandments, how do you handle moments when your personal values and institutional expectations are in conflict?
So my experience may be a little different because I'm teaching at a college, but I will go back to when my son was young and we were looking for a homeschool group for him. So we worked with something called SALT, Serious About Learning Together. And they didn't have any religious views for attending, so we went there. But if I wanted to teach or do anything in a classroom, I had to agree with their values. And so that was a turnoff for me. So we went there and I helped monitor the hallways, but I couldn't do any more. And this is a homeschool group. To me, that was, a hard time. Also, before the recent things anyways, we had a lot of DEI training, which I learned a lot from at the college. And that's all shut down in the past year, but most of us still hold on to it anyways.
The most, I guess, egregious example I have is I used to substitute in California and in the Los Angeles area, and I worked for Glendale ISD for a year. And I am a queer person, And I do not make it a point to talk about my queerness to students at all, but students will always have the gesture of like, oh, do you have a girlfriend or whatever? And I said, well, no, at the time I had a partner who was male, but I didn't bring anything explicit or any detail. I just said, oh, I have a partner at home, he. And when the he came up, the pronouns were like, the pronoun question came up like he. Like, what do you mean he? It's not a girl. It's like, well, no, it's not a girl. And for the most part, 99% of the time, students really didn't care. And the students that did hear that were very accepting of it. And for the most part, parents and teachers were pretty accepting of it too. I had one instance where I basically had the same question answered and I went home. And about a week later, my administrator for the district told me like, oh, we have a request that you do not teach at this school anymore because the principal said that you were talking about something that was inappropriate. And I said, well, what exactly was I talking about? I'd like to know so I can improve so I don't have this happen again. And they said, oh, well, we don't know. They just said that there were some complaints from parents and that they said that this was things that they didn't want their children hearing, so that the principal requested that you never teach there again. And my first thought was, well, this sounds kind of dumb, but whatever. Like, that's one school off the list. But my second thought was also, you've kind of set an example now for these children because you've basically taught them that the ability to love somebody is harmful if it doesn't agree with what your authority figures believe. And that's going to resonate with them for the rest of their life in some way or form. They might be afraid to share their own personal experiences if they're going through their own identities. They may be afraid to support their friends or support other people, or they may try to involve themselves in that conversation in a negative way. And it really made me feel that I need to make sure that I am not necessarily more careful because I didn't do anything, but I need to make sure that I at least have a conversation with people who are administrators or people who feel that those types of conversations shouldn't be allowed, especially in this state, because now that these 10 Commandment things are coming about, I mean, it's forced, correct? So what my thinking is, if I have to have this experience is, okay, we'll do it, but we're going to have context for this. We're going to have some historical context that goes around this, because I can't just tell you what the board says and go with it. I have to have some type of ability to give you all of the facts and let you decide for yourself how that makes you feel and how you're going to process that. Even as a child, you may not have all the information right now, or you may not have all the tools, but you will, hopefully, and you'll be able to have this conversation with yourself and other people and have it inform your views in the future.
One of the many reasons I've tended to avoid the K-12 classroom, although I do a lot of work with K-12 students. In my own experience, like currently and previously, I've always been kind of adjacent to that. And so working within the guidelines that are established by other organizations has always been a part of it. And those aren't things that you can navigate around or really push back on, because then you're just not going to be allowed to do it at all. So working within those structures becomes incredibly important. But as Cam said, the context around them is really important. Like if I have to put up a sign or something, like, yes, I'm going to have to put it up. I'm not going to not be able to put it up. And so how do we contextualize that? How do we make that not the end of the conversation, but the start of the conversation? And so, yeah.
Okay, and in follow-up, is it in this increasing time of polarization, what responsibility do you feel you have in helping students engage across differences? And how do you use your faith to help you?
Really, it goes back to UU isn't necessarily uniquely positioned for it, but I think is well positioned for being able to support lots of different people of lots of different faith traditions. And so I have students of incredibly diverse backgrounds across my whole city. And so they're coming from different family upbringings, they're coming from different religious backgrounds, they're coming from different life experiences, they're coming from different economic brackets. All of them have their own needs and have their own experiences that they are bringing. And what I can do is create an environment that is respectful and supportive of all of those differences. And so one of the even simple things like, oh, we're having like a pizza party, or like that's something we're going to happen. It's like, okay, thinking about allergy sensitivities, thinking about, oh, pepperoni. If a bunch of my students are Muslim, that's not an option. So being cognizant and being aware and factoring that into the planning and into the process of supporting them, that is where I can really support them. And knowing about these different backgrounds and knowing about their experiences and asking questions and having those conversations with those parents, that is how I can create a environment that supports their belonging and their inclusion, no matter what their background is.
I think it's very funny that when I have to substitute or tutor in some kind, there's always a list of things you have to hit. And inevitably that list will be derailed at some point because you work with students and they always have things going on. But I always take that as a time of, I can teach, but I'm not going to teach what's written, because what's written might not necessarily be something you use in the future at some point. You may not need to use calculus. As a user of calculus, you may not need to use calculus in your daily life, but you may need to use, how do I talk to these peers that I have who I don't necessarily understand but want to be friends with? Like, what can I use in this experience to help me with every other person and interaction I have for the rest of my life? And I feel like when we try to put these ways of learning into brackets of like, we have to hit the curriculum standards so they can pass the test so they can get a job, and well, I mean, also not getting jobs. We're not getting paid a lot. We're not hitting these things that we have been incentivized to learn, but we're also de-emphasizing the educational and social aspect of what teaching and learning is. Learning isn't necessarily I go to school to do my math problems all day. It's I get to learn how to interact socially and be a better person. So when I come here, I try to make sure that I emphasize that for myself, and I try to emphasize that when I talk with all of you, and I do the same thing with my students. It's very important to me. It's, as a humanist, it's what I believe is supposed to happen as a species, as a group of beings and creatures together. We're supposed to be able to be the best of ourselves, and that's what I try to emphasize as a teacher as well.
Emily, I have a question for you specifically. You already mentioned the DEI changes that have happened in your school, but how does your role as someone who teaches in higher education differ from the recent news stories, and how are they the same?
So, I mean, yeah, we don't have to post things, and we have, like Ian, I have students from many backgrounds, and they in many home lives, home situations. So how is it different in the higher? So, cause I don't know what, I mean.
Do you have a little bit more flexibility? Or
oh yeah, I think we have more flexibility, and teachers will post things on their doors. I tend to put the things I post towards join this STEM league, or or in support of my friends who've lost their kids also. But I mean, the main thing I've seen, I don't see anybody having 10 commandments on any doors. I did see RIP for Charlie Kirk, and I also saw people with pictures of ice cubes and X's on them. It's not said specifically, but that door was pretty adamant. I think there was quite a few on it. But, yeah, and we're just told not to be careful about posting things on Facebook or something, because if a student is upset, they'll find your post and they'll look way back and find something to show people about you or something. So we just have to be a little cautious about, like saying something that might be misinterpreted, I guess, or I don't know. But because we're not required, it may be a difference, If it's a public school, then a parent may be able to complain more if they don't like something, whereas at a college, they can be in the class or they can drop the class. If they don't want to be in it, they can drop, But I try to, the DEI training I had before, I think was very good. And we just try to keep it like we can and just keep going. They have told us that the Teachers Association can no longer meet on campus. Like, we're no longer part of the school, even though that was meeting for the teachers to support the school. So that's one of the biggest effects for us, is we have to okay, if we want to have a meeting, go somewhere else. But anyways, that's it.
Cam, many of us aren't educators by profession, but we are all educators in some other way. What wisdom from your classrooms do you think you could make would make our congregation stronger, in a more compassionate community?
I mean, that's tough to say because we're already pretty cool. Like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn or our own horn or anything, but I think maybe the biggest thing is trying to be a little bit more trusting of our vulnerability as a group. I think we do a good job of that now, but I think sometimes we might try to hold back certain words or phrases or ways to describe things or talk about things because we are afraid of offending other people or afraid of how other people may react to things. As you've noticed, I don't really care about what people react or what I say. I talk how I talk because I think a lot about things, but I also don't hold back in how I describe things. And if I have to use language or things that people may find colorful, I get it, but also that's how I feel about it. It's truly how I feel about it. So I feel like when it comes to other people who have been in this congregation for maybe a longer bit of time or have more experience with more people in this congregation, I feel like they've kind of gotten accustomed to how everybody believes or how everybody thinks and how everybody reacts to things, and we try to tailor our responses. And I feel like a little bit of my advantage is I'm kind of getting on that wavelength with everybody, but I also realize I can't hold back on how I feel about things because that would take away from my own sense of autonomy and self-identity. And I feel like that is important for me as a person, and I try to emphasize that for other people. So when it comes to things you believe, and if you believe very strongly in them, say it. Let it be known. Don't try to hold back on it. It's very important to make sure that we all get the gist of it as well.
And the last question is for you, Ian. What gives you hope about the future of education and what our faith community can do to support educators and students?
Yeah, an easy one. What gives me some hope, especially, is among the young people, they have access to more information than pretty much anybody else. And they do see what is going on. A lot of people discredit the experiences and the insights of children and youth. They do. And there is reasons for that. But also, they see what's going on. They see what happens when, the teacher talked about that and then the teacher's no longer there. They see the unfairness. They see the injustice of it. They see, what's going on with, things being put on walls, and they can ask questions. They have access to that information. Whether or not they will ask it is a different question, but that's where our roles as educators really are, because, again, they are people. All students are people, and everybody's still a student. Everybody is still learning. And so what really gives me hope is that as much as people are pushing so hard for the world to be one way, the world just isn't that way. And the children and the students of all ages, they see that, they know that. And I think the harder they push, the less they're going to be able to succeed. And so that's where I think our role as educators really is supporting that inquiry, supporting that critical thinking, and supporting that exploration of the world. That's ultimately what we're here for.
Excellent words to end on. So thank you very much for joining us today. I will offer these words as a benediction. Teachers Everywhere by Amy Zucker Morgenstern. In every person we meet, especially those who cause us discomfort, we find an opportunity for us to grow, to learn, to go further along the path of transformation. That is our purpose in life. Every single one of us is a teacher. May the next week bring you many such moments of meeting that help you become the person you want to be, and may you welcome them with joy. The warmth of this community flows among the generations. We are all learners and we are all teachers. May the love that connects us here bless the lives of everyone we meet as we carry it into the world.